The Social Security 2100. Did they pass it, and where did it go? That's a great question and exactly what we're going to talk about right here in the video, so let's get right into it. I know in this video we're specifically talking about the Social Security 2100, which is a piece of legislation that was originally introduced a number of years ago. Then, just a couple years ago, we got a new iteration of this legislation called the Social Security 2100, a sacred trust. Well, what did they do with it? Did they finally pass it? Did they forget about it? Or where do we currently stand? Again, great questions. Let's get into it and discuss all the details. However, really fast before we do, thanks so much for joining me. If you're new here or if you haven't done so yet, please make sure to subscribe right down below the video. It's totally free to do so, and I'm here for you right by your side each and every day, watching the latest details hitting the wire, doing the research and breaking it all down into these short videos so you can stay posted on what's actually going on out there and anything popping up that may impact you, your money, your benefits, your lifestyle, your bank account, and of course anything popping up you can possibly grab and or take advantage of. So again, thanks so much for joining me. Please subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and let's get into it and talk about the Social Security 2100 that we've heard about so many times over the last few years. What happened? It seems like it just completely disappeared. Did they finally pass it? And it's in law right now. Well, again, that's what I want to talk about because as of right now, no, unfortunately, it has not been passed. Now, let me talk you through the details of this piece of legislation because this is one that actually seemed like it had a lot of traction about it. They had a number of different hearings in Congress. They talked about it many, many times. In fact, about a year or so ago, I was out with you showing you the videos of John Larson, who is the architect behind this one, talking from the floor in the House of Representatives, discussing this one. There was a lot of traction. There's over 200 representatives in the House who are actually in support of this thing. So again, it seems like pretty obvious. Why wouldn't they just get it done, right? Well, it seems like we haven't heard anything about this in a very long time. But let me talk you through some of the provisions of this because as we dig into it, it's actually a pretty good one. There's a lot of good things about it. However, just like everything, there's also a couple bad things about this piece of legislation. And again, I will get into that as well here in just a couple minutes because just like everything, sounds great, but there's always something about every piece of legislation that, at the end of the day, it sounds perfect, but then there's a couple things we always want to pay attention to. But first off, let me buzz through some of the key provisions within this. And again, there's a ton of them. There's about a dozen different provisions within this that would actually change and reform Social Security for millions upon millions of beneficiaries. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'll talk about some of the key features of this piece of legislation. Number one, boosting the minimum benefit for millions of beneficiaries. In fact, about 5 million beneficiaries who are living in poverty and have benefits well below the federal poverty line. They want to increase those benefits above the federal poverty line by 25%. So that's a huge one right there, okay? So boosting benefits significantly for about 5 million beneficiaries. Next, they want to change the way that the annual cost of living adjustment is calculated from the CPIW to the CPIE. We've talked about that many times here before in other videos. That would give a little boost to benefits each and every year because the CPIW does fall behind the CPIE, which better reflects the actual living expenses and where fixed income beneficiaries aged 62 and older actually spend their money, okay? So it actually better reflect the actual living expenses of fixed income beneficiaries a little bit. A couple tenths of a percent each and every year over long periods of time translates into a lot of money. Hundreds of dollars on a monthly basis, thousands of dollars on an annualized basis. So those are a couple things there. Next, they also want to repeal the 5-month waiting period for SSDI beneficiaries. Now, maybe you've seen this before in some of my videos here on the channel, but I've talked about the 5-month waiting period. If you're an SSDI beneficiary, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You apply for SSDI, maybe you get approved, and then they say, sorry, we're going to make you wait 5 months to make sure that your disability is prolonged and it's going to last a long time. Well, seriously, I mean, if somebody has a disability, I'm pretty sure they're probably dealing with it, and that's the situation. But unfortunately, there is the 5-month waiting period. And again, I do have dedicated videos here on the channel talking exactly about the 5-month waiting period. So these are a few of the things that they want to do. Now, again, there's about a dozen different provisions within this new iteration of this Social Security 2100. And why it has just kind of disappeared here as of recently is kind of confusing to everybody, just as confusing to me, because it seemed like, according to what they were talking about, the number of times that this was brought to the floor in the House of Representatives, we heard John Larson talking about it, we had all of these people co-signing on it, about 200, by the way, like I said earlier, about 200 different representatives in the House that were in support of this, probably still are in support of this, and then all of a sudden it's like it just disappeared. What happened, right? Well, again, we kind of want to look at things like this. We got to continue watching piece of legislation like this, because sometimes this is what happens. We get a lot of talk about it. We get a lot of traction about it. We get a lot of support throughout lawmakers. And then all of a sudden it just goes quiet. It's just like it goes dormant for a while. Hey, what happened? Where'd it go? Did they pass it? Did they secretly pass it and we didn't know about it? Well, unfortunately, that is not the case here with this one. However, let me talk really quickly about a couple of the different things about this legislation that would not necessarily be the best thing in the world. Now, again, don't get me wrong. A lot of the stuff here that we talked about is good stuff, okay? It's pretty good stuff for a lot of beneficiaries. However, let me talk about something else. A lot of these provisions within the Social Security 2100 would actually sunset after 5 years. What does that mean? It simply means that over 5 years, they would phase out. So it would be a short-term fix for a long-term problem, right? Well, that's not really what we're looking for. But don't get me wrong. Any fixes to any problems at this point would be very much welcomed. But that is one of the major downfalls that I've read about and that I've seen a lot of people talking about is, yeah, don't get me wrong. The provisions within the Social Security 2100 are great, and this program would be fixed up and it would change a lot of lives for millions and millions of beneficiaries. But at the end of the day, 5 years later, when all of these start to sunset, well, that's not good, because it's going to put beneficiaries right back to where they started, okay? Just like a couple years ago. Let me use this as a quick example, okay? Way back in March of 2020, right? So quite a while ago, a few years ago now. Back then, we got that small group of Democratic senators who came out talking about a small, short-term $200 per month boost to millions of Social Security beneficiaries. You remember this? We talked about it a lot at that time. Well, they wanted to bring that out. They wanted to implement a temporary $200 per month boost to benefits, and then they wanted to go away after about the end of the year. Well, that would have given a short-term boost to benefits for what was it? I don't know. It was like a year or so, something like that. It was not very long, and then it would just go away. Well, again, don't get me wrong. It'd be great. It'd be super nice to get that extra money, but then all of a sudden it just pulls the money away and it stops. That wouldn't have been a very good situation for a lot of beneficiaries, because a lot of people have become reliant on that money, start relying on it and counting on that money to be showing up in their bank account every single month, and then sure enough, it just disappears. That's it, right? So it's good while it lasts, but any of these different pieces of legislation or different provisions in there that would sunset after a certain period of time, not a good thing, right? For a lot of people. Anyway, this is where we currently stand on this. I want to come back with this really quickly and talk about the Social Security 2100. There was a time there about, I'm going to say about a year ago or so, we were talking about this a lot, and I had videos popping up here. I was showing videos of them talking about it on the floor in the House. They were having meetings with the committees and all kinds of stuff. It was looking very promising at the time, and then just totally disappeared, just gone, like it never existed in the first place. Who knows? It makes me wonder, though, now that we've had all this time where we've gone kind of dormant on this thing, it makes me wonder if they're going to come back at some point here relatively soon with the next iteration. Remember, a number of years ago, they came out with this, the Social Security 2100, and then about, I'm going to say 2 years ago or so, they came out with the newer iteration, the Social Security 2100, a sacred trust. Now it makes me wonder, are they going to come out with the next iteration, the Social Security 2100, I don't know, the new normal? I don't know what they're going to call it. I don't know what they're going to call it, if they have one in the works at all. I'm just saying, maybe there'll be another one now, considering it's been a couple of years since we got that last iteration, and it's been a little while now, a handful or several months now, since we've heard any major updates on this thing. Either way, like I've said before in other videos, it's important to continue to talk about things like this, because even if we haven't heard about it in a while, maybe somebody, maybe a lawmaker, maybe somebody of major influence like that, will see this video and think, hey, that's a good idea. We haven't heard about it in a while. Maybe we should revisit this. Maybe it's time. It's just like so many things out there as well. We've probably experienced this in our own personal lives, right? You experience something and it's like, I want to do this thing, but it's just not time yet. You give it a little bit of time. Maybe you give it 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half, something like that, and you revisit it, and then you think, now is the time. Now is the time I should do this thing. Now is the time I want to explore this thing, right? So sometimes timing, it just isn't quite right for some things. And then we give it a little bit of time. And then sure enough, we come back and revisit it and think, this is the time. I'm going for it now. Now is the time to act. You never know. Maybe it's the time right now for Congress to do something about this. So anyway, this is another piece of legislation. Again, we've seen so many come out as a result of the Social Security 2100. We've seen many other provisions out there, a lot of legislation that's floating around out there to reform Social Security, to boost up benefits, to change the COLA, all kinds of things like this. This is another one, but I would say this is probably one of the most popular pieces out there. But unfortunately, this is just one of those that kind of disappeared. And again, we're still waiting for further details on it. Anyway, as I get more information on anything going on out there, of course, I'll bring it to your attention right away. Please make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet. Share the video with your friends, family, social media, and go back and check out any of the other thousands upon thousands of videos here on the channel. Until next time, enjoy your day, take care, and catch you again later.